I'm just so happy to have Allison Jones on the call with me today. Allison has been a tutor with me for, oh my goodness, this time has just flown by. And she's amazing. She is a double major in physics and mathematics. It's crazy. And she absolutely loves calculus. She's been teaching everything from Singapore math methods to math competition, and we've gone up and up and up. So uh, we are just so happy to have her to talk about her position, what she does, and if you could just say hi, Allison. Welcome to our kind of podcast, YouTube, everything video.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I am so glad to have you. We just have fun talking about different things, and it's always fun to talk to you, Allison. So I'm glad to have you, and let's go ahead and jump in. One of the things I was wanting to know is like, what do you wish that everyone understood about your job as a tutor? Like not everybody understands what that means. Can you tell me a little bit more, like what you would tell somebody when you tell them that you're a math tutor?
Sure. So my job definitely requires a lot of dedication and patience being a tutor for students, but it is a great job. I definitely love doing it. I love working with students and I love watching them improve and being confident in their work and their skills. But basically, my job is I kind of assist. So usually, my students already are taking a math class, and I'm kind of like another resource that they use to help them better understand topics that they might not be learning the best in their class, or they just want more problems to work on or more information given to them. So I'm kind of a tool to use to help them understand these topics. But along with my sessions, it really is important for students to also be working independently to strengthen these skills on their own and make sure that they fully understand all the material that they have been learning.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, one of the things that I have to give Allison props, she makes amazing problem sets. And I know that you guys might not understand how valuable this is, but there is a big difference, right? And Allison, right, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a big difference between a problem that's just good because it covers the material and a really great problem that challenges students to think. Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I agree that there can be a problem that really tends to look at one topic where you can get a problem that encompasses a bunch of different topics that you've learned and really allows you to use skills that you've looked at in the last few years and not just in one lesson, and make sure that you really understand and are remembering these important foundational skills that math just builds upon.
That's so cool. Yes, because like the problem you're talking about is much more complex and rich, right? And when you're putting something together that you haven't seen for a long time and you're putting them all together, like I see students get challenged that way. Is that something that you feel is a good thing, to be challenged and work harder at this kind of thing?
Yes, I definitely think it is important to be challenged because it really allows you to know your like just what you're capable of. And I think a lot of students, don't think that they can really conquer these problems that they might read and be like, oh my goodness, like this, I don't think I can do this. And then when they do it, the satisfaction of them being able to accomplish this and really, have the belief that they are smart, because it's important to think and know that you are smart, especially with math.
Do you think that's something everybody can feel? Like, can everybody feel smart with math?
I 100% think that. And I think that a lot of people think that they're just bad at math. And it is true that, you might be better at other things. Like some people just have their things that they are good at. And might not be, the best, but I think everyone can be good at math. It just goes down to your foundational skills, how much time you put in yourself, and honestly, your teachers.
Okay, so we were talking a little bit about teachers. Like you had told me before our we started the presentation or the conversation, is that you were blessed with having really, really great math teachers. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how that impacted you?
Yeah, so in high school, I had every class that I took, I had the best teacher. And what really goes into that is them being excited about the subject that they're teaching. Because if your teacher isn't enthusiastic about what they're explaining to you, then you're not going to be enthusiastic about it. And although math might not sound like something that's really exciting, it can be because it's really awesome and it can be used in so many different ways. So those teachers that I had just really showed their enthusiasm with every day. Every time I walked in their classroom, they were excited to see me. I was excited to see them. And they just really had a great lecture and teaching style that just really helped me out. And that's another thing that makes the teacher better in a way, is being able to adapt to your students' learning styles, just because we're all different. We all learn differently. And just because you don't learn one way doesn't mean you're a bad student or you just don't understand it. It just might be you need something else to help you. So I think that's a huge thing that my teachers had, was being able to adapt to their students' needs.
So is that something you also carry out, right? Like, is that something you do with your students, is adapt to their needs?
Yes. So I usually stick with one thing that I start with in terms of a teaching style, and then pretty quickly I can figure out whether that works for them or if it doesn't. So then if I see that it doesn't and they're really not understanding it, I'll try 1, 2, however many things it takes, to make sure that they are fully understanding it. And then I can kind of use that and be like, okay, this is how they learn. Either they need visuals or they need examples, or they just need me to go slower. So
Yeah,
I like to definitely change my teaching style for my students.
that's really cool. So your students actually get like the super tailored, lesson. It's not just like, oh, I'm just going to teach you the same way everybody else is, but I'm going to teach you in a way that I know that we've seen works for you. Um, and you mentioned wanting to give a great foundation to your students, right? So this is as this part of that process of giving them a really good foundation, is also connecting with their learning style and helping them to learn in the best way.
Exactly. Yes. Foundational skills in math are super, super important because math really just builds upon itself. And if you don't understand the beginning, you're going to have a terrible time understanding the end. And I think that's why a lot of people and kids get so like frightened or scared by math and bigger problems, is because they didn't have a great foundation to begin with. And it's so important that those foundational skills are really, really strong. And sometimes I will focus on those things maybe longer. Even if I know they understand it, I'll still keep repeating the same things just to make sure that these skills are solid. And now we can move forward. Now you are comfortable, you're confident in yourself, and we can just build upon this now.
So cool. So you were saying like taking these fundamentals or these foundational things, and you really, really, really make sure. I'm like, when you're not talking of just like, oh, I've seen it. You're like making sure that they really know it. And that's like you just mentioned, this is so important because of their future, like mathematics. So like you can see that all the way to calculus, like what they're learning in the how does that tie in? Because I know you absolutely calculus. How does that foundation tie in with, getting into calculus and being successful with calculus as well?
So, I mean, it comes down to honestly simple things like multiplication, adding fractions. Like you still see those things in calculus. And obviously, at that point, you're not taught those things in the class. You're taught the more complex topics that you're learning in calculus. So, if you don't have a good foundation of, adding fractions, multiplying, dividing, long division, things like that, things you learn in elementary school, then at that point, you have to teach yourself along with the more complicated things that you're learning in calculus. And that ties through with any calculus or any course in mathematics. Like if those little skills, division, what may seem, simple and like, oh, well, I understand addition, I understand multiplication, but do you understand it enough to be able to apply it in things like calculus where you might not have practice with it in a while? like fractions, for example. I mean, you once you learn them and you see them, you might not always, repeat problems with fractions in it. So it kind of, might get lost with all the other
Uh,
materials learning.
no, that makes so much sense. Like you don't think when you think calculus, you don't think addition, but you're bringing that to light. Like you need to have these fundamentals so well in your knowledge. Like especially since you mentioned, like you might not see it. Like sometimes you see something and then you stop seeing it for a while and then it comes back. And I totally get it. Like you making sure that they have such a firm foundation really lays such a good path for them because then they won't forget. And when they see these harder things, they don't have to go back and relearn them. Um,
Exactly.
that's really, really awesome. I love how you're bringing that about. So, what makes you feel so inspired? Well, I guess we kind of talked about it, but what makes you feel so inspired about this? Is it your teachers? Is it something else makes you feel so inspired about teaching?
So definitely was my teachers. I mean, my teachers really just made me love math. In like elementary school, middle school, like I didn't mind math, but it wasn't something like I was like, ooh, maybe I'll major in this in college. Like it wasn't something I was super thrilled about. In high school and those teachers and just really loving those classes and the subject just made me want to pursue math even further. And then from there, once I had a great education with mathematics, it made me want to give other students that opportunity to have a great teacher like I had and someone that makes them love math instead of hating it. And also, I just, with my students, like when they come in with a problem and they don't understand it and they're just really, upset about it or just they don't want to do it and they hate math, I love seeing their progress and them start to feel confident in themselves and for them to know that they can do this. It's something that they are fully capable of, and just seeing them get excited about math instead of dreading it. So that inspires me for sure.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I love hearing that. I mean, I could feel that too. Like just feeling the student coming in, and that you're able to help them like kind of completely turn their mindset and their energy and their emotions around just by showing they could be successful. So
Yeah.
no, that's really great. So with that, is there been just kind of side thing? Has there been anything in a tutoring session that's been a surprise, like something that kind of threw you off, or was kind of funny, or unusual situation that you want to share?
Um, I hmm. I mean, definitely my younger students have quite the imagination. They are very funny sometimes with the things that they can come up with, which is another reason why I love meeting with them and just seeing their imagination. I don't know if I can think of a specific thing, but definitely just seeing what they can come up with. And especially in some classes, we have parts of our classes where they can make up their own word problems for like multiplication and division. So definitely seeing them try to think of a good problem and like what they use to form this problem and then being able to solve it themselves. That is definitely a fun part of that class, is seeing them, their imagination and what they can think.
Has there been any funny topics? Like I could imagine all the little kids like saying cats. Like I want to use cats in all my problems. Or dinosaurs. Has there been a funny topic for like one of their problems?
It's something like cookies or candy or like horses or anything that they can think of that they want to use. But yeah, they're all pretty funny.
That's great. That's great. It's very personal. Like kind of like what we were talking about before, right? You personalizing, they get to personalize their word problems as well and make it for their own. Cool. So what do you think is like something that biggest challenge? I think we might have touched on it a bit, but what do you think is like the biggest challenge that students are facing right now, with mathematics? Um, what is their biggest challenge?
So I think the biggest challenge is honestly, like, as everyone says, access to technology. And another big thing is calculators. So I'll touch on the first one. Technology can be a great thing. We all know that, and the internet and having access to it can be awesome. It can really be a good resource if you use it the right way. But some kids, especially, I see it more in older kids who, again, might not have had those foundational skills, look to it more as just, okay, I don't understand this problem. I don't want to put any effort in. I just don't understand it. Let me just find the solution. And then, they find the solution, they copy it down. They don't try to understand the solution. And if they do try it, it still might be confusing because, again, they don't have that foundation that they needed. And just kind of using it as, they don't really want to put in the effort. They're over it at that point. So that is definitely a flaw when it comes to the internet, is having that easy access, because you can look up literally any math problem and pretty easily find a full solution for it and just copy it down. I know a lot of teachers, pay attention for that, which is a good thing for sure, making sure students aren't doing that. But kids are still going to do it. And it gets worse with each new grade level and each new class of younger students, because they were kind of brought up with this technology, like having access to iPads or tablets and, being able to figure that out pretty easily. So that's one thing. And then calculators, I love calculators, but I also hate them because they're very beneficial for when, you get to those more advanced classes and you don't really have the time to compute those long, addition or multiplication or whatever you're looking at. But as a younger kid, I really don't think calculators should be used to maybe halfway through high school or for certain classes. Yeah. Because what happens is, kids will learn addition, multiplication, they'll understand it. But then what happens is in later classes, when you're not learning addition or subtraction, that's when they start to use their calculator as their own brain. And this, just like your brain is a muscle, and if you don't strengthen that muscle with doing these on your own, addition, subtraction, then you get to calculus, and then everything has to be through a calculator. You can't even do basic multiplication like times tables in your head. And, I've tutored kids all ages, but in calculus, specifically college students, I saw a really alarming amount of students that could not do simple multiplication, like, 9 times 4, things like that. And they're in calculus class, and they can't even do the simple multiplication. So that frightens me a little bit, and why I don't like when my students use calculators, and if I see them using it, I'll politely ask them not to, so that I can make sure that they still remember these skills on their own and they're not relying on their calculator at this point. So those are two things, and those things are only going to get worse because iPads and tablets have calculators on them. And it's very easy to download the app or have the app open and just easily plug in the numbers instead of just doing it yourself. And again, it comes down to, foundational skills, but also laziness. Like some students, if they don't understand it or they get frustrated, they start to get lazy and they don't want to try to understand it at that point. So that's why foundational skills and just continuing that, enforcement of just strengthening those skills each year, however you can do, no matter what it is, practicing, even if you're in, freshman in high school and you just take time to practice basic math skills like multiplication and times tables and things like that. I think that is really important.
Yeah, because you talked about your brain, right, being like a muscle. Like when you're not using it and you're not strengthening it that way, then it does kind of get flabby. I know that there's certain things that I used to be able to do so quickly, but if I'm not doing it all the time, and I can only imagine that gets worse with a student who just has so much struggle with multiplication, and instead of pressing through and actually trying to overcome that struggle, they kind of turn to the internet for just the solution, right? And how do they feel good about themselves if they continue to have to do that and struggle each year after? You need that foundation because the next level is going to get harder. And I definitely feel that gap between hey, I should know how to do this and I can only do this, and I feel frustrated with myself. So if we can head it off earlier by hey, don't use the calculator. I know I've done a video about that as well. Don't use the calculator until you absolutely need it, which I really feel is like algebra, end of algebra 1, maybe algebra 2, some of geometry for some of the problems. But you don't need it if you want your brain to be stronger, because if your brain's stronger, you can take your brain everywhere with you. You can apply that thinking pattern or that understanding elsewhere. But if you don't strengthen it, you can't take it. Like, you don't have that capacity. It's a, like, I don't know, when you stretch out a balloon or something, maybe like it gets blows up bigger and bigger. And then you're like, okay, the next time it was a lot easier to stretch it out, right? When
Yeah.
you blow it up. But the first time it's hard. It takes work. Like, sometimes I'm like, hey, can somebody else blow the balloon for me? And they're like, no, you're the only one who can do it. Right. So if you do it the first time and you work through that, you definitely gain that, like, for video gamers, like an EXP, right? You gain an EXP that you wouldn't gain anywhere else. So I totally feel you. Like, if that's now, like, what's it going to look like in 10 years if you just keep trying to, like, copy off of something else? You're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck in that rut. So yeah, so if you know, like, work to go back, right? So even yourself, if you could turn the time, talk back to the age of your students, if what would you say to them? Like, if you were talking back to, going back to yourself at their age, what's something you would tell them? I mean, I know you had a different pathway, but you know, something that you've learned, maybe that you tell yourself about math at your students' age.
Definitely, I would learn to, not that I didn't appreciate my teachers when I was younger, but you don't really understand what all goes into teaching. So definitely be more appreciative of them and of the time they take out of their day every day to help me and other students. And probably just be more grateful for my education and that I had a good one. And, some students don't, or they don't have access to one at all. That might, for sure. And also teachers, besides just like topics that they teach, they also give a lot of good advice. And if you really listen to them, they can really help you out in all aspects of life, not just school. They have, I mean, they're very wise, they're older and they've been through life, and they can just help you along the way, if you really listen to them and just pay attention in class and do more work outside of school, for sure, and just really focus on myself and strengthening myself and not worrying about anyone else. I feel like when I was in school, I always worried about, well, what did this person get on their test? Like, oh, I didn't do that good, that means I'm stupid, which is literally not true at all. Just because you don't do as well on someone else on a test doesn't mean you're any less valuable than they are. So definitely stop comparing your grades and your work to other people. Just pretend you're the only one in class. Pretend it doesn't matter. Whatever grade you get, if you worked hard on it and you put in your best, then it's a great grade and you did a great job. So I think that's what I would tell her.
Oh, that's awesome, Allison. I love that. I love that. I could totally relate. Like, comparison during school, seeing other people constantly not necessarily feeling like I was the best either. I could totally relate that. Audience out there, don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself. Are you really doing the best? Are you doing the best for who you are? Are you trying your best? Because I know, like, sometimes we get to that point where, or at least me, I'm like, get to that point where, like, okay, am I going to take that next step? Or am I going to just, like, be done? Like, when I'm running, right? Am I going to go that extra 5 minutes? Or am I going to go that extra half a mile? And it's like, oh, I'm tired already. I just want to give up. But we have so much more capacity than we can even think of. And I love how, like, I think that you believe in your students. It's showing, right? Because it's not just, are you saying that to yourself, but you say that to your students. You really believe in them, and you believe that they can do so well. So yeah, like, is that something that you've learned as a lesson from teaching math, or is it just something like over time it's kind of come to you? Um, this idea of, like, being able to believe in yourself and the capacity to do so much more.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. Definitely over time, and as you get older and you look back and you look at your own accomplishments and you realize that comparing never mattered. And also teaching, just because I see so many students like either they're shy or they just don't like, just if we're in a class of students. And I remember, not wanting to answer the question because I felt like I was wrong. And then the teacher or someone else answered instead of me, and it was right. And I was right. And I just never, ever believed that I was never confident in my answers. So seeing students hesitate to answer or, think that, if they say the wrong answer, it's going to be the end of the world. Like, all teachers want to see is that you're trying and you're participating and you want to get better and you work through the problem, and maybe you didn't get the right answer, but who cares? We just want to know that you are working and you are trying your best. And so, yeah, definitely teaching, and over time, just realizing that you don't have to compare to others. You don't have to, well, if I get the wrong answer, like everyone's gonna like look at me weird or laugh at me. Like, that's not true. Nobody cares. The teachers just want to see you trying your best and participating and know that you're enjoying the class and you want to answer, and just interacting with other students and really just forming a relationship with your teacher and the students.
That definitely gives a different perspective. I love how like you're speaking that too. You're speaking that, I think that's speaking life in ways, because when you're there and you've got so many emotions and so many like worries and everything, you just need to focus in it. And your teacher's there, cheering for you. When you've got a great teacher, like you've said, that's cheering for you, mentoring you, and caring about you. I believe that's such a big change, and I'm glad you want to do that as well for your students. All right. Oh my goodness, so much good stuff. So, gosh, well, let's see. I've got a couple different amazing questions, kind of a little bit out of the woodworks, but one of them is like, I think we've kind of heard a theme today, but maybe this will accumulate, or maybe I'll take us in a different direction. So if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be?
Yeah, so I actually thought of this before when I was looking through the questions, and I saw this question and I thought about it for a little bit, and it just so happens, like I already wrote this out, but the way that this conversation went, it's kind of funny, is my billboard would say, make your younger self proud. And I feel like looking back, you don't, when you're getting older and time flies by, you don't really think back to your younger self and what she dreamed of and what goals she set for herself. And now I think back and, it makes me proud to think that I'm doing things that younger me would have been excited about and looked forward to. And I'm accomplishing those things. Because I feel like, when you get older and life gets in the way and things get difficult, you start, putting your goals on, like, you don't focus on your goals anymore, and you don't focus on what your younger self would want you to and what makes you happy and your passions. So I think if once in a while you just think back to younger you, and just think of what she wanted to do and what she got excited about when she thought of her future, and just do some of those things, I just feel like everyone would be a little bit happier and just make them and realize that they've accomplished a lot and they should be proud of themselves. And I don't know, I think it's a fun aspect to look at when you think of your younger self and where you are now.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Like, I don't even want to say anything about that. I think you said it so well. So what say that phrase again so we can all remember. What did you want to put on your billboard? Sorry, I'll write it down too.
Make your younger you proud.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, definitely. Big dreams. Keep those dreams going, keep those dreams going, you guys, because dreams keep you alive. I mean, it is dreaming about what's next and aiming for something. I mean, there's so many amazing things. I think right now we're living, this amazing thing of being able to serve students and watch them and grow in confidence. And it makes me so happy doing that and hearing that, like, that's what my younger self wanted to do something in education. And I don't want to wait. I want to do it now. I want to help students. So making your younger self proud, and that you are making your younger self proud too. Awesome. All right. So I guess we just had a wonderful conversation. I want to go on and on, but let's go ahead and wrap up with this last one. We will have to do part two because these are so much fun. What is one question that if I had known to ask, I should have asked you, or I could have asked you, what would that be?
So I kind of talked about it, but since it wasn't a direct question, maybe why I got into teaching or why I even got into math in the first place. And I already kind of talked about it. But yeah, maybe like that.
Yeah,
Something
well,
like
tell us again. Tell us again.
I will. So teaching, why I got into, well, first I'll start with math. So why I got into math again. So my teachers throughout high school, pretty much high school, were amazing and just made me really appreciate the subject of math and everything that goes into it and all that it can be applied to, which is a lot. Um, and just made me really, really enjoy learning that specifically. So when I decided, to go to college, I thought of, what makes me happy? What am I passionate about? And the first thing I've always loved math. The first thing that came to mind was math. So I was like, okay, so math was my one major and physics involves math. So that was my second major. And then in college, I was looking for a job and I really enjoyed being able to use my education and what I've learned and help other students. So I started with college kids and then I worked my way down to as young as 5 years old and just seeing, the students' faces when they feel confident in themselves and when they understand something and just their excitement to come to class. And even though some things might be off topic of math, just seeing them get excited to tell me, what they did over the weekend or what fun thing they saw, just really made me understand how much I love teaching and just made me want to continue doing it with any age.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, that's a great way to end because I know that your kids really love you and they really enjoy being with you. And they give those glowing reviews because Allison was teaching me. And so, Allison's been teaching math competition. She's been teaching calculus. She's been doing one-on-ones with little kids. Just a plethora of math knowledge and mentorship and, making sure that students feel and grow in confidence and foundation. So we are just so glad to have you on the team, Allison. I know you have lots of wonderful things in store for you. You've been amazing, just not just with math, but like with your stuff with physics. So Allison's a powerhouse in that area and definitely a real, example for girls. Girls, you guys can get into physics, you guys can get into STEM. And if you have that passion, I think I had that same part. Like when I saw math, I loved math. If you love math, go for it. Don't hold back. You can be in there too. Just like Allison and I, we absolutely love math. So it's just so encouraged to talk with you today, Allison. I had a lot of fun having this conversation. I've learned a lot and I've got my quote. So I'm going to keep that on my laptop and keep it for me as well as making my younger self proud. So again, thank you again, Allison, for joining me today.
Of course, it's been great.
Thank you.